Welcome to the Justice League, where the truth meets power. Amina tightened her grip on the worn strap of her bag, eyes scanning the restless crowd around her. At 22, she carried more than just belongings. She bore the heavy dreams of leaving behind hunger and fear. Beside her stood Kofi, a protective guardian from Ghana, whose steady gaze masked a world of pain. Mousa, barely 19, wore a hopeful smile, though his trembling hands betrayed his fear of the unknown. Tariq was silent, his secrets heavier than the small pack on his back, while Juma's fiery temper simmered beneath his tall, broad frame. Together, they were strangers bound by a dangerous decision: to risk everything for a perilous journey across deserts and stormy seas. From Africa to Europe, chasing a fragile promise of freedom. But on this path, hope would clash with harsh reality, and not all of them would survive. Before we start the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today, and if you like the story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell icon so you don't miss future stories. Like this one, Amina's breath caught as she stood at the edge of the bustling market, the fading sun casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. Around her, the city pulsed with noise and life, but inside her chest, a quiet storm raged. At 22, she was no stranger to hardship. Hunger had been a constant companion since childhood, and dreams of a better life were like fragile sparks, barely held alive by sheer will. But tonight, those sparks felt ready to ignite into something fierce. Beside her, Kofi adjusted the worn strap of his backpack, his eyes scanning the crowd with a vigilance that bespoke a life of caution and loss. From Ghana, he carried the weight of responsibility not just for himself, but for the others who had come together by chance. Mousa, barely 19, whose hopeful smile masked the tremors of fear in his hands. Tariq, a man of few words, whose silence held mysteries no one dared to unravel. And Juma, tall and hot-tempered, his restless energy barely contained beneath a calm exterior. They were 5 strangers, united by a single, dangerous choice: to leave behind the land of drought, despair, and endless struggle and risk everything for a chance at a new life. A perilous crossing from Africa to Europe. The stories they'd heard haunted their thoughts: boats lost to the merciless sea, border guards with guns, nights spent trembling in the desert cold. Yet none could turn back now. The price of staying was death in 1,000 quiet ways. The price of going was unknown, and possibly even higher. The market's cacophony faded as they moved away from the center of the city, slipping through narrow alleys, stained with the dust of 1,000 footsteps. The air was thick with the scent of spices and sweat, and the low murmur of voices rose and fell like waves. Amina's heart pounded in rhythm with their hurried steps, every sound sharper, every shadow darker. Kofi walked close behind her, his protective presence a quiet comfort. "You're doing good," he whispered when she stumbled over a loose stone. "Keep your head down, keep moving." Mousa lagged a little behind, clutching his small pack with nervous fingers. "Will we really make it?" His voice was barely above a whisper, but the question hung heavy between them. "Hope is all we have," Amina said, trying to keep her own voice steady. "And I believe we will." Tariq followed silently, his face unreadable beneath the brim of his cap, and Juma's gaze flickered sharply with impatience. "No more talking? Juma snapped. "We move when we need to. We don't waste breath." The group reached the outskirts where a battered truck waited, its engine rumbling softly. Their smuggler emerged from the shadows, wrapped in a threadbare scarf that concealed most of his face. His eyes were hard, cold as flint. "This is no journey for the weak," he said, voice low and unforgiving. "You pay, you listen, you survive. The desert will take what it wants." The truck jolted to life and rumbled into the dark, kicking up clouds of dust that settled over the barren road. Inside the cramped cabin, silence pressed down on them. The smuggler drove without speaking, eyes fixed on the horizon where the desert swallowed the last rays of sunlight. Kofi reached out, squeezing Amina's hand. "We will get through this," he said softly, a promise more to himself than to her. The first night was merciless. The truck stopped miles from any town, and they were forced to walk the final stretch under a sky filled with cruel, indifferent stars. The heat of the day gave way to a biting cold that seeped into their bones. Their feet ached, their throats burned, and every rustle in the dark set their nerves on edge. Mousa stumbled and fell onto the rough ground. "I'm fine," he said, but the pale sweat on his brow told a different story. "You need to rest," Amina urged, kneeling beside him. "You can't keep going if you're sick." "I can't slow us down," he insisted, pushing himself up. By dawn, the desert sun rose mercilessly over a sea of sand and rock. The group trudged onward, their bodies heavy, their spirits wavering. Tariq carried the smallest load, but moved with a quiet strength that belied his young age. Juma's frustration boiled over with every mile. "We should turn back," Juma growled. "This is death walking." "No," Amina replied firmly. "We won't." The scorching days and freezing nights wore at them, and the border guards became an ever-present nightmare. They crossed checkpoints with whispered bribes and hidden prayers, hearts pounding as every rustle or shout threatened to end their journey. One evening, Mousa collapsed completely, unable to rise. His face was pale and his lips cracked. Amina sat beside him, tears burning in her eyes. "Please," she whispered, "hold on." But the sickness was a shadow swallowing him whole. Weeks later, they reached the desolate shore where the final and most dangerous part of their journey awaited. A fragile boat, barely seaworthy, rocking against the black waves of the Mediterranean. The boat was overcrowded, filled with desperate souls clinging to hope and fear in equal measure. The night was thick with salt and salt-stung tears. Amina held Kofi's hand as the boat pushed off into the dark, the city lights a fading dream behind them. Hours passed in tense silence, until the sky exploded with thunder and the sea roared in fury. Mousa, weak and fevered, clung to Amina's side. Suddenly, a giant wave swept over the side, dragging him into the cold abyss. "No!" Amina screamed, reaching for him, but the sea was merciless. Kofi dove after Mousa, but the waves swallowed him too. Only 4 remained. Dawn broke on a shore of broken dreams. The survivors stumbled onto European land, but their pain was far from over. Authorities closed in, and in a desperate bid to escape, Kofi was injured. Amina cradled his bleeding arm, her hope flickering dangerously low. The price of their dream was now etched in their scars and memories. Yet beneath the sorrow, a fragile light remained. The will to survive, to keep moving forward even when the shadows threatened to consume them all. And so, with heavy hearts but unbroken spirits, Amina and her friends prepared to face whatever lay ahead, determined to transform their pain into strength. Because sometimes surviving the journey was only the first step toward truly living.